On December 27th, 2011, a man called 911 from his home in Troy, Missouri.
Lincoln County 911, what is the location of your emergency? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, I need you to take a couple deep breaths so I can see what's going on. What is the address where you need us to come?
What?
Is she breathing? She is not breathing? Russell, where's the knife now? I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said, hon. It's laying right next to her? It's in her neck? Okay.
He told dispatchers he thought his wife had killed herself. She had been diagnosed with cancer. She had been in pain.
Okay, what is that number?
He was wrong about how she died. But he would spend the next 4 years in a prison cell before anyone in authority agreed with him. Before we get to the insurance policy, or the library, or the knife, we should talk about Betsy. Elizabeth K. Meyer Faria. Everyone called her Betsy. She was 42 years old, and she lived in Troy, Missouri, about an hour northeast of St. Louis, in a house on Sumac Drive she shared with her husband Russ and their 2 daughters. She was the kind of woman who fills a room, the kind of person you notice when they walk in and notice when they leave. Her husband Russ described her in terms you hear often about people who leave an impression. She had a beautiful smile and a personality where she'd never met a stranger. She ran a part-time DJ business. She called it Party Starters. It was the right name. In early 2010, Betsy Faria was diagnosed with breast cancer. By October 2011, a little more than a year before her death, the cancer had spread to her liver. The prognosis was terminal. One doctor estimated she had between 3 and 5 years left. Betsy didn't retreat from her life. She kept working. She kept planning. She was already thinking about her daughters, about what they would have when she was gone, about how to leave something behind that would matter. People who knew her said she was still, right to the very end, thinking about others more than herself. She was excited, in the final weeks of her life, about a fundraiser she was doing with a friend. Money for a struggling family affected by cancer. She thought it would be her legacy. We will come back to that fundraiser. Betsy had met Pamela Hupp around 2001 when they both worked at a State Farm insurance office in O'Fallon, Missouri. They were different in some ways. Betsy warm and outgoing, Pam more serious, about 10 years older. But they became friends, and then drifted apart, as people do. They reconnected when Betsy was diagnosed. Pam Hupp started driving Betsy to her chemotherapy appointments. She was there almost every day. When Betsy was too exhausted to walk alone, Pam walked with her. When Betsy needed a ride, Pam drove. From the outside, it looked like devotion. And Betsy, facing the hardest thing she had ever faced, accepted it that way. On December 23rd, 2011, 4 days before Betsy Faria was murdered, 2 women walked into the Winghaven branch of the St. Charles City County Library. They asked a librarian to witness a signature. The document was a change of beneficiary form for Betsy's life insurance policy. The policy was worth $150,000. Until that day,
The beneficiary had been Russ. After that signature, it was Pamela Hupp. No one in Betsy's family was told. Not her daughters, not her sisters, not Russ. Not a single person who had known Betsy her entire life knew that on December 23rd, 4 days before she died, the sole beneficiary of her life insurance had been quietly changed to her friend Pam. Pam Hupp would later explain this in multiple different ways. In one version, Betsy wanted the money to eventually reach her daughters. In another, Betsy specifically didn't want her daughters to have it. The stories kept changing, a detail we will return to. What doesn't change is the date, December 23rd, 4 days before. December 27th, 2011, a Tuesday. Every Tuesday, Russ Faria spent the evening at a regular game night with a small group of friends in Lake St. Louis, more than 20 miles from the family home in Troy. That was also the day Betsy had a chemotherapy appointment. Betsy had already arranged a ride. She texted Pam Hupp to say she didn't need one. Her old friend Bobby Wan was going to be with her. Pam Hupp showed up anyway. That evening, Hupp drove Betsy home to the house on Sumac Drive. They arrived around 7 p.m. At 7:20 p.m., Hupp sent a text from Betsy's phone, or a text was sent to Betsy's phone, saying that Pam was now home, in O'Fallon, about 30 minutes away. But cell phone records told a different story. The call that Hupp made at 7:27 p.m., the call she later said was to tell Betsy she was home, pinged a cell tower north of Troy, in the area of the Faria home, not at O'Fallon. The morning after the murder, investigators sat down with Pamela Hupp. They asked her if she had gone inside the house that evening. She said no. They asked again. She revised. She had gone in, just briefly, just to turn on the hall light. Then she'd left, by 7:20. At some point after 7 p.m., while Russ Faria was at game night, his alibi witnesses around him, his cell phone pinging towers 20 miles away, Betsy Faria was stabbed 55 times in her own living room. A kitchen knife was left in her neck. According to the 2021 charging documents filed against Pam Hupp, investigators believe Hupp then used Betsy's own socks, dipped in her blood, and walked them through the house, placing blood in rooms and on surfaces, in a pattern suggesting a violent domestic confrontation. The scene was designed to point toward a husband, a domestic dispute, a marriage in trouble. Russ came home to find his wife dead and called 911. His first panicked instinct was that she had taken her own life. She had been in terrible pain from the cancer, and she had mentioned it once, months before. He was wrong. But that statement, in the first seconds of grief and shock, would be used against him.
The investigation into Betsy Faria's murder moved quickly and in the wrong direction. Investigators focused on Russ Faria almost immediately. They had a hysterical 911 call. They had a witness, Pam Hupp, who told them the marriage was troubled, that Russ was not nice to Betsy, that Betsy had been thinking of leaving him. What they had in terms of physical evidence was almost nothing pointing toward Russ. No blood on his clothing, no blood on his car, no blood under his fingernails. A cell phone that placed him 20 miles away during the relevant window. 4 alibi witnesses, backed by security camera footage at a gas station and a receipt from a fast food restaurant. The prosecution theory at his 2013 trial
would suggest those witnesses conspired with Russ to commit murder. That the cell phone had been deliberately positioned to create a false alibi. That the receipts were part of an elaborate scheme. None of this was supported by evidence. But the jury never heard what the defense could not present. That Betsy's $150,000 insurance policy had been signed over to Pamela Hupp 4 days before her murder. That evidence was withheld. Pam Hupp sat in that courtroom and testified against Russ Faria. He was convicted in November 2013, sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. For 3.5 years, Russell Faria sat in a Missouri state prison for a murder he did not commit. His attorney, Joel Schwartz, did not stop. He filed appeals. He kept asking questions. He got a new hearing. In June 2015, a judge granted Russ a new trial. The judge ruled that evidence had been withheld from the original jury that could have changed the outcome. At the retrial, a bench trial, decided by a judge alone, Schwartz was finally allowed to present the full picture. The insurance policy, the beneficiary change, the inconsistencies in Pamela Hupp's statements, her location that evening. Pam Hupp was not called to testify.
In November 2015, Judge Stephen Omer acquitted Russ Faria. He called the original investigation rather disturbing. Russ walked out of the courthouse a free man. Pam Hupp continued to deny any involvement in Betsy's death. While the Faria case was working its way back through the courts, another death in Pamela Hupp's life had gone largely unexamined. On the morning of October 31st, 2013, a housekeeper at the Lakeview Park Independent Senior Living Community in Fenton, Missouri, found the body of 77-year-old Shirley Newman on the lawn below her third-floor apartment. The aluminum balcony railing above her was broken. Shirley Newman had Alzheimer's disease. She had dementia and arthritis. She sometimes became unsteady. Her death was ruled accidental. Shirley Newman was Pamela Hupp's mother. Pam Hupp was the last known person to see her alive. She had dropped her mother off at the apartment the afternoon before her death. A toxicology report, buried at the time, would later show that Shirley Newman had 8 times the therapeutic dose of a sedative in her system. In 2017, the St. Louis County Chief Medical Examiner changed the manner of Shirley Newman's death from accidental to undetermined. An investigation was inconclusive. No charges have been filed. What we know is this. In a recorded police interview before Russ Faria's first trial, before her mother died, Pamela Hupp told an investigator that she didn't need to kill Betsy for the money. Because once her mother died, she'd get $500,000. Her mother died 9 months later.
By the summer of 2016, the walls were beginning to close. Russ Faria had been acquitted. His attorney had pointed publicly at Pamela Hupp. Dateline NBC had covered the case. A local television reporter had been asking hard questions for years. The insurance money had been the subject of civil litigation. Hupp's inconsistencies were a matter of public record. She was not charged with anything. But people were watching. On August 10th, 2016, 6 days before Louis Gumpenberger was killed, a woman in O'Fallon was approached by a stranger in an SUV. The stranger said she was a producer for Dateline NBC. She offered the woman $1,000 to reenact a 911 phone call for the show. The woman, Carol Alford, was suspicious. She declined. She contacted police. She didn't know the name Pamela Hupp,
Surveillance cameras at her home recorded the license plate of the SUV.
Louis Royce Gumpenberger was 33 years old. He lived with his mother in St. Charles, Missouri. In 2005, a car accident had left him with a traumatic brain injury. He was physically and cognitively disabled. He had 2 children. On the morning of August 16, 2016, Louis had a job interview with a company that helped disabled people find employment. He was eager. His family said it was unlike him to miss something like that. He never arrived. At 12:08 p.m. that day, Pamela Hupp called 911 from her home in O'Fallon. She said there was a home invasion in progress. She said she had shot the intruder. Police arrived to find Louis Gumpenberger dead inside the house. He had been shot at least twice. He carried no identification. In his pocket, 9 $100 bills and a handwritten note. The note gave Louis instructions. It said he should kill Pamela Hupp and make it look like Betsy. Hupp told investigators that Louis had ambushed her in her driveway, forced his way into her car with a knife, demanded Russ's money, a reference to the $150,000 life insurance payout, and that she had escaped into her home and shot him in self-defense. The story didn't hold up for long.
O'Fallon Police and St. Charles County Prosecutor Tim Lomar moved methodically. Cell phone records traced Gumpenberger's movements on the morning of August 16th. They showed him being picked up, lured from his apartment by someone offering him money for a simple task, driven to the house in O'Fallon. The pattern matched almost exactly what Carol Alford had described 6 days earlier. A woman claiming to be a Dateline producer, a cash offer, a reenactment. Investigators examined the $900 found in Gumpenberger's pocket. They found a $100 bill in Hupp's bedside table. Its serial number was the next in sequence. They had been withdrawn from the same bank trip at the same time. A knife found in Hupp's car was traced to a nearby dollar store. The items she purchased there that day matched items found at the scene. The note, the elaborate note in Louis' pocket about Russ's money and making it look like Betsy, was planted evidence. Louis Gumpenberger had been brought to that house to be killed and framed as a hitman. The frame job was intended to breathe new life into the theory that Russ Faria had been behind Betsy's murder all along. It was a plan built on the calculation that a disabled man with a cognitive impairment would be unable to recognize or resist what was happening to him. It was a plan that collapsed within a week. On August 23rd, 2016, Pamela Hupp was arrested. Prosecutor Tim Lomar stated she had hatched a plot to find an innocent victim, murder that innocent victim, and use the body to frame someone else. Joel Schwartz, Russ Faria's attorney, said, had Lincoln County done the job they should have done, Pam Hupp would have been charged with murder, and Louis Gumpenberger would be alive.
In 2019, Pamela Hupp entered an Alford plea in the murder of Louise Gumpenberger. She acknowledged that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict her and accepted a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. She did not admit guilt. Prosecutor Lomar, at a press conference, said he believed she deserved to be put to death. She is currently incarcerated at a Missouri State Correctional Facility. She will not leave. In July 2021, Lincoln County Prosecutor Mike Wood formally charged Pamela Hupp with first-degree murder for the death of Betsy Faria. He announced that he would be seeking the death penalty. He also announced a new investigation into potential prosecutorial and police misconduct in the original case. Since then, a former Lincoln County Sheriff's deputy has been charged with perjury for allegedly giving false testimony at Russ Faria's 2013 murder trial. The trial for Betsy Faria's murder is expected to begin in 2028, more than 16 years after her death. Here is what the record shows about what was taken from Betsy Faria. Not the money, though that was taken too, and her daughters never received a cent of the insurance policy their mother believed would provide for them. Not just the years, though she was 42 years old, and the cancer, however brutal, had given her time. 3 to 5 years, a doctor said. Time she would have used. What was taken was this. She spent her final year believing she was being cared for. She spent it raising money for struggling families, planning for her daughters, trying to leave something good behind. She believed the person who drove her home that evening was her closest friend. She believed that right up until the end. Betsy Faria was a mother, a wife, a woman who ran toward people rather than away from them. She was someone who made parties start. She was someone who never met a stranger. She deserved more than she got from this story. She deserves to be remembered as herself, not as a footnote to the crimes of someone else, not simply as a victim, as Betsy. Russell Faria spent more than 3.5 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Pamela Hupp is serving life in prison for the murder of Louis Gumpenberger. She has been charged with the first-degree murder of Betsy Faria. Trial is expected in 2028. Shirley Neumann's death has been ruled undetermined. No charges have been filed. The $150,000 life insurance payout intended for Betsy Faria's daughters was never given to them. Betsy Faria was 42 years old.